your impressions 2 days on the pitch with this team so far?
Very excited. I think it just ramped up my excitement, to be honest with you. You know, it's been a long time since August. There's been a lot of paper being pushed around in that time frame, a lot of planning, a lot of establishing processes, recruiting of staff, recruiting of players. I think it's so energizing to be on the field with a tremendous group of players with so much talent. So for me, excited and energized would be the real big feeling that we currently have at the club.
And you've talked a lot about culture, trying to bring in a specific type of player. How are you seeing that sort of come to fruition once you can get them on the field? You talked about young, hungry players looking for opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that we wanted to really zone in on, was the hunger of the player and the characteristics that would align with what we're trying to do culturally within the organisation. So in terms of how that's reflected on the practice field right now, it's been brilliant, actually, to be quite honest. The intensity of our trainings, the willingness to put in that extra yard for the team has been first class, and like I said, it's just so energizing.
All right, starting to see some hands raised. I'll go over to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, Christy, Jackie here with Woman Kick Balls.
Hey, Jackie.
Yeah, I know it's day 2, but I just wanted to kind of talk about just overall the players. I know you have a couple who are on contract with the Women's Soccer League or Super League, and then you also have, Yuki Nagasawa coming in. And so from your perspective right now, just how do you think that dynamic of this team will kind of change, or what that will look like when adding in some veteran players to the mix of just such a young team in general?
Yeah, I think we've tried to be very selective about the veteran players that we've brought in, and you've got Yuki and you got Michelle Betos, and we have 1 or 2 other targets that will be we're hoping to bring in too, that'll just drop in those pieces of experience that'll help round out the youthfulness within this team. I mean, like I said, with youth comes a real lack of fear because they haven't been scarred by previous experiences, and the experienced players that we want to bring in that are here and that we are bringing in should act as a guiding light and a sounding board as they move forward in the young players' professional career. So to me, it's at this point, it's day 2, right? So a lot can change, but at this point, it's fun to watch. You've got that energy, you've got that buzz, and then you have the 2 or 3 pieces that are really, really experienced in providing fantastic guidance.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Hey, Christy, if I could continue here, sort of be remiss if we didn't mention one of the bigger names that's not yet in camp, with Emily Fox getting called in to train with the United States Women's National Team again. Can you kind of break down what her timeline looks like, and then maybe how beneficial this experience could be for her in the meantime before she does get here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're obviously all very delighted and proud of Emily for her call up to go back in with the national team as they prepare for the She Believes. So rather than Emily getting home from camp and then spending a day with her parents and family, and then jumping on either a plane or driving here, and then going through quarantine and chasing out back down to Florida, we felt that it was more beneficial for her to build a program from our end that aligns with what the national team needs, and allow her to stay in her home environment, and also celebrate the fact that she got picked as the #1 draft pick, spend a bit of time with her family before the season really gets going, because it's a bit of a more holistic approach. So with that said, she'll be at home until I think she's got another few days at home, and then she'll go into camp, and then she'll come here on the night, as it stands right now, on the night of the 15th, and she'll go through quarantine, and then she'll get on the field right around the 18th, 19th, based upon the protocol that's tied in between the NWSL and US Soccer.
And last one for me, we've got dates now on the calendar of when the Challenge Cup will be, when the regular season will be. Can you kind of map out for us what you're looking to get out of the next couple of months or so, their phases to the lead up, and how intense it is now versus how intense it might be closer to that April 9th, that first weekend of the Challenge Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, there's a real onus right now in creating this professional environment for many of the young players who've been thrusted from being substitutes or having very little playing time in the NWSL into been key players for us. So it's setting that standard early. Truthfully, we haven't started ramping up preseason just yet. We're going to layer them up so that in about 4 weeks' time we can really get after them hard and where the body's ready for that. And then ultimately, the focus is within that is embedding the style of play that we wish, helping them become more aligned with the culture that we want to establish on a consistent basis within this organization, and then and build out the chemistry and build out the connections on the field between the players. I mean, every player is learning to play with each other, and with the typical expansion draft, you have players coming from 2 players per team, but the majority of these players didn't get to play much, if any at all, at their respective clubs. So building those connections on the field is going to be a key piece for what we're doing along the way.
It looks like we've got a question from Dominique. Go over to you next.
Hey, Christy, it's Dominique Yates with the Courier Journal here in Louisville.
Hey, Dominique.
Hey, how are you? You kind of mentioned your style that you hope to eventually get to, but I guess what style of play do you hope to have with this team?
We want something that's very attractive. We want something that's effective, that allows us to compete ultimately at the highest level in women's soccer. If you look at the players we've recruited, they have a really specific skill set that's consistent across every player, and that's important to help us embed that style of play. It'll also be based upon. I've been quite fortunate to have various different experiences in the league and analyzing the league. And from that, the hope is that we've gained some insight in terms of what it takes to be successful within the NWSL.
Thank you, and welcome to town.
Thanks very much, Dominic.
Okay. Hi, Chrissy. It's Sandra from CBS Sports.
Hey, Sandra, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you.
We had Lauren on a little bit earlier, and hearing you talk about it, and you spoke a little bit right now with Dominique's question, but I heard the word intensity thrown around a little bit between her and you now, and it's only been a couple sessions, and she's mentioned and you mentioned sort of the competitive aspect going on within these early days of training. So what is going to be the transition for you to sort of channel and funnel all of that into trying to formulate something more stylistic for your team?
So, I mean, ultimately, we're establishing a club, right? We're trying to build out the identity of this club and try to embed what we feel is important for us in the long term. And ultimately, that's a mindset and a mentality in terms of how we approach practice and how we approach our games. I mean, for me, it's not just on the field; it's just a way of life. It's a growth. It's a growth mindset that is really based upon pushing yourself to the limit as much as you possibly can. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of meetings that we've had, but the one thing that we're not skipping by is in terms of how we manage the time in practice and how intently we go about things. So once we are able to get through the next 2-3 weeks and we establish what the roster looks like on a more consistent basis, then we can really start embedding some tactical nuances within our game in terms of how we want to approach certain opponents. But the hope is that as we become accustomed to the league and people be accustomed to what we're doing in the league, there should be some characteristics to our play that should be consistent and noticeable.
And just to follow up, you had mentioned like timelines for some of the veteran players earlier, somebody like Betos or even rookie like Emily Fox. In terms of some of the players that you did select via the expansion draft, are with what's going on in the Women's Super League, obviously hearing the injury to Tobin Heath, is there still ongoing communication there with some of those players, or are those kind of tabled until the season over there is over? You sort of walk us through what's going on with that?
Yeah, listen, we've built a team, and we everybody wants to know what we want to do with them. you build a team in order to have the best players in the world here. That's our hope. That's what we want to do, and ultimately we want players playing here that want to represent the club. We feel that we put a fantastic platform out there, and the interest in it's generated for players worldwide it's been overwhelming. It's been fantastic. The players want to be at this club, and our intention is to give that platform to those players that wish to be here. And everybody wants to know about Tobin and Kristen, and so do we. We're psyched. We can't wait to find out more about them and what their long-term intentions are.
Thanks so much, Chrissy. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Anna.